WNST. We've got the Orioles doing a lot of nothing. We certainly have the Terps on the football side and all the fallout of what happened in the Michigan State loss last week, but it is finally basketball season, which is very happy for this guy, but sad that it's no longer golf season, although we've had some decent weather lately as well. He is our golf and local hoops insider. He is Robert Canady. You can find him at Buckets and Birds out on Twitter, as well as then at Compass Point Golf Course, where they're doing their turkey shoot later on in the week. And look, you kick the season off with some of these games, and if it's Duke, Kentucky, and it turns out to be a turkey, that's one thing. But I don't think anyone expected great shakes out of Morgan or Loyola on their television during election coverage on Tuesday night. But the season has started, and, I'm happy for that. And I know you love the squeak of the sneakers on the hardwoods.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a interesting night to be starting, opposite the elections and everything. But it was, definitely, a big night locally, with all the teams in action. And most of the smaller mid-majors were all on the road at big schools, and then, of course, Maryland, the reverse of that, hosted a mid-major. So, and they all pretty much, went to form, as we would expect. UMBC didn't shock the world, and Towson, didn't beat Virginia, so Virginia escaped a second upset. So, it was kind of, it was good to see everyone back on the court and kind of get a look at a lot of new players from some of the teams. And pretty much Maryland and UMBC and Towson all have, significant new additions to the team, that'll be interesting to watch here in the near future and going forward.
Well, you mentioned a real kickoff night, right? So it's kind of like opening day in baseball. If everybody plays, it's kind of fun. This was sort of opening day in basketball, and I don't know that we've ever had sort of a, shoot the gun and we all go and play. And that's kind of the way it felt on Tuesday night in a lot of ways, whether it was Duke and Kentucky or Michigan State and Kansas, and there were a couple of outcomes there. But for Towson to be playing a top 10 team, a top 5 team really in Virginia, as well as Morgan State playing up in the little gym in Villanova and watching Jay Wright run around. No shocking outcomes, but kind of a neat start that, unlike the NBA that started, and I didn't realize it for a week because I'm under a rock, college basketball started on Tuesday, and I think most people on my timeline recognize that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a bit different this year. It started on the Tuesday as opposed to the Friday, which in the past, they've always kind of done Friday and or Saturday that opening weekend, and with this moving it up to the Tuesday before that Friday, for whatever reasons they did, I honestly never really heard, other than that some of the expanded conference schedules. With like the Big Ten, I think is going to play 20 games this year, so they've had to move some conference games into December. So probably then push the, start back a few days, allow some more non-conference games. But, it was really a neat way to do it. It's, if you follow Twitter the days leading up to it, everyone was counting down the days to tip off and, where their favorite team was going to be, where their school was going to be. And, the big matchup with, like we mentioned, with Duke and Kentucky, that was just, I watched that at the end of the night. And that was
it was kind of hard to watch all the games, right? Like it's like college football on a Saturday. I don't know how anybody ever watches Appalachian State when Clemson is playing. I literally, and there was a little bit of that going on because at 7 o'clock, I put a Facebook status up and said, "What are you watching?" And everybody was watching something else. And I know you had long-standing plans to go down to College Park and watch Delaware play, and you sort of like hit the little red button on it because you thought better of it. You thought, I can watch 6 games, or I can see who's on the court for Towson, and I can see what's happening with Morgan, and get a look at these teams against the best competition they're going to play all year in several cases.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I was planning to go down, but at the last minute when I saw all these others and the timelines, I said, hey, I can have the TV on one, I can have the iPad on another, be checking the phone on another. So it was kind of like my own little election central there, watching the returns come in. And
well, you knew the returns weren't good right? Most of these games you knew were going to be by the second half. It was going to be 60-something to 40-something or like that, right? For the
exactly, and not so much for the outcome, but just to see some of the new players and how they performed, and along those lines, Towson's young guys and transfers looked pretty good. UMBC's new guys, they played against a bigger, stronger team in Marquette, and Marquette's going to, I think, top 2 in the Big Ten. The Big East, favorite this year. So that was a really strong test to go on the road. So but just wanted to see some of the individual performances and kind of see what's coming in this year and who the guys are going to be to watch. And, I didn't really expect any. The funniest thing I saw all night was they showed Tony Bennett's press conference after the Towson game, and he looked at, toward the end of it, he was sitting there and he looked up in the corner and he saw a wry smile on his face, and he commented, he goes, "Oh yeah, I'd like to thank our sports information director for putting the UMBC game on the TV up there." He goes, "Exactly what I needed to see. Thank you."
Robert Canady is here. He is Buckets and Birds out at Compass Point and on Twitter and on college basketball. Now that college basketball season has begun, you can follow him to UMBC or Navy or Morgan or Coppin or anywhere. He's going to be Coppin at a big game as well on Tuesday night. We air their games here as their flagship. We'll be hearing from head coach Juan Dixon at some point here in the not too distant future. Let's start at the top of all of this because I think we can talk about UMBC and Marquette and Towson, Virginia, all that stuff. Let's talk about Maryland, and I don't want to say they almost lost to Delaware, but certainly Delaware made a little surge at the end and made the game interesting. What are we really expecting out of Maryland? Because I expected more than that against Delaware, especially on a final score basis.
Yeah, I think I did too. To see them kind of, falter in the second half and, the defense kind of let up and let Delaware back into it. A team that when you're up on a team like that, you expect it to go from 15 to 20, 25, and 30, and they went the opposite. They let Delaware go on a 20-some run, 30-12, and not finish them off. And, they were sure they were playing some new kids and some freshmen and everything, but they had some returners back, and so that's got to be a little bit alarming to see what happened there. But, again, they came away with the win. But, the first freshman, the big guy, Jalen Smith, looked really good, along with Bruno Fernando. It looks like they're going to be quite a duo up front. And, Cowan made the free throws down the end, which, when it got down to 3 with, I think, a minute and a half or 2 minutes to go, you're wondering, what's going to happen here. But, he made the free throws, and you expect that out of your point guard that's, the leader of the team. So
they didn't shoot the ball well, right? I mean, let's be honest.
They didn't. No, that was the next thing I was going to mention. They just absolutely didn't shoot well, and that's something that, last year they had issues with. So it's, obviously one game, you don't panic over it, but it's something they're probably going to focus on in the next coming days this week, before they, play their next game.
Let's talk about Towson because I know, that's where the best team has been in Towson locally here in recent years. They go down to Virginia. They're taking on the best team, walking in the shadows of what UMBC did last March. Some thoughts about where they are and, Howard, Fobbs, these players and where they're going to be. This is obviously the best competition they're going to play, so I don't know that there's any, any shame in losing by 30 points to Virginia or shooting 30% or whatever went on. But who are these kids, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, it's definitely, that was one of the big questions going into this year. And, obviously that game went how you expect it to go. They hung with them for about 8 minutes. And, then Virginia's defense kind of really just took over. And, the shooting for Towson, was just, horrendous. So against, a top 5 defense in the country. So, that's what you expect. But, was interested to see their junior college transfer, Brian Fobbs, looked really good. And he was kind of leading the scoring in the first half. And then another newcomer, Tobias Howard, kind of took over in the second half. And, so between the two of them, looks like they got some scores this year. And then a bunch of other freshmen. And, so we'll see how it goes. I think, Pat tends to play 10 people early in the season, to see what his best rotation is going to be. And, by the time we get to conference season, I wouldn't be surprised to see it down to probably an 8-man rotation. And, he'll find out, who those 8 are going to be probably over the next, 4 to 5 weeks.
For you with UMBC and coming back this year from, what was sort of Haley's Comet. I don't know what else to call it at this point. But you look down, you see Sherburne, you see some names here, but they've got a long way to go. And to your point, taking on Marquette at the beginning of the season, they are now that name. They are UMBC. There's something people are going to talk about a little bit.
Yeah, and there was, I followed them on Twitter last night, some of the comments, regarding that game. And it was... there were a lot of comments there, nationally. It was obviously getting some attention to see what they would do as a follow-up and, playing another big-name school. And, of course, they weren't going to be Cinderella twice. But I think, from what I saw, they're gonna do really well in the America East. They're predicted to go third, which is not bad, but I think that they could challenge. Now, again, they're the transfer Ricky Council from Providence, had a bad shooting night, and
they all had a bad shooting night. They shot 22%.
They literally all did, yeah. But as far as just the athletic ability and the talent, trying to picture them playing against an American East team versus a Big East team, I can see they're two big guys, Brandon Horvath and Max Curran. Were totally overmatched, but they're not going to face guys like that in the America East. So I think there's definitely something there to this year that's going to be a good building block from last year that they'll continue on and see. And Arkel Lamar, looked really, really strong in a lot of the games. So it's, it was a good test to go on the road and open up against a strong team like they're going to face a few more of those before conference season begins as well.
And then there's Coppin, our partner here at WNST, that starts the money games with Wisconsin, Big Ten game. They're going to play at Navy. They're going to play at Virginia. They're going to play at UMBC later on in the month. Maybe not as many money games as maybe Fang took back in the day. So now that I'm looking at it, doesn't look like they're jumping on planes and running out to the Pacific Southwest and doing crazy stuff here. But they lost by 20 points as well. A second year for Juan and trying to make this thing better and make it work. Just some thoughts about Coppin, because there is a tradition there, what Fang said, and Juan Dixon's not there to go 1-22 this year.
No, he's definitely not. And from having spoken to him a couple weeks ago at the media day, his expectations are much higher this year than last year. Last year it was a feeling out process of the players and him to the players, and they had that murderous row of a schedule, non-conference that we had talked about, often last year.
Oh, my God, they played 20 games in a row to start the – I mean, they went on the road in November and came home in, February. It was crazy.
Yeah, and against teams that they had no chance to beat. In this year's schedule, non-conference, sure, it's got the Virginias and the Wisconsins in it, but it's also got, the Charleston Southerns and the Wolfords and the James Madisons and, the UMBCs. Will be, a good local game, Tennessee State. So there's, a lot of them are still on the road and everything, but these are definitely games that, that they can compete in and, win their share of. I'm sure Juan's thinking that, and then they go into the conference season, much more prepared than they were last year and with a little bit more confidence, versus coming off 0-13 and getting blown out in every game and traveling for 2 months straight. So, it will be interesting to see. They play, I think, Dayton coming up this weekend and then, Navy next week. So that's, that's definitely a game against Navy that they can match up well against.
Robert Canady is Buckets and Birds out on Twitter covering college basketball locally for us. He tweets all the time, East Court side all the time. And I watched a little bit of basketball before I moved into election mode on Tuesday night. And I chose to watch Morgan State play Villanova a little bit. It was actually sort of close when I had it on for a little period of time early in the game. Wound up being a 100-77 game, and Villanova could just shoot the ball. Period. But Morgan shot 46%. They went up there and they played representatively. Obviously, they're going to get out rebounded in that kind of a game. But a nice little test for Morgan State and a representative showing on national television.
Yeah, that really was. That's a game that, you totally could have expected to be a 50-point, blowout or so. And I watched a lot of it as well, like I said, going back and forth between that iPad and that. And, Villanova, again, we've talked about Virginia and everything, talking about top 5 teams. Villanova, national champions. And so it's, that was quite a test to go up there and quite an environment to play in. And I think they certainly represented themselves well, with a respectable shooting night. They shot, of all the other games we've talked about, they probably shot better than any of the other teams. And, so that's, you've got to, if you're Todd Bozeman, you've got to take away some positives out of that. You played them pretty, close both halves, and it ended up being, I think, a 23-point game. But, definitely nothing to be ashamed of there in that showing. And we'll see, definitely be watching them as they go on this year. And, how they do in their conference along with Coppin.
Yeah, I would say, Coppin, UMBC, and Towson, they played who they played. Maryland struggled, so that's interesting. But I found Morgan to be interesting. Taking on Villanova, a team like that to start the year and kind of hanging in a little bit and having it be a big start to the college basketball season. I know we're at the end of the golf season for you down there at Compass Point, but you do have your turkey shoot, and that's kind of a big deal down there in Pasadena, right?
Yeah, it'll be our last kind of big soiree of the season. Comes up on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, and it typically gets a good crowd regardless of the weather, even if it's a little chilly and you have to put on an extra layer and some golf clubs or whatever. It's most people think realize it's kind of the unofficial end of the season here because the calendar turns to December the next week, where you could expect snow at any given moment. So it's a fun day, as far as a long weekend for a lot of people, and a way to get out and kind of get a fun round of golf in. And it's always a good popular event. So yeah, registration's open for that on our website, pointgolf.com, and all the information's there that they need to know.
Beautiful down there right now, right? Leaves changing, the whole deal, right?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of days of torrential rain earlier this week, but the leaves are nice and bright and colorful. I put a few pictures up on I think my Instagram page, which is Buckets and Birds, the same as the Twitter. So it's definitely fall golf is one of the prettiest times of year, and we're definitely in the even though we're in the middle of fall, we're in the later stages of golf fall, if that makes any sense to you.
My people are from the equator, Robert, so I've had my long johns on for at least 6 weeks already. So, these Ravens games are wearing me out in the cold. But, hey, man, cold golf, people dig it. Bundle up, get some Royal Farms coffee, get on out there and hit it. That's what I would say, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We'll see you next week, man. A lot of college basketball, and I know this is your favorite time of the year as well, as we get all these out-of-conference games and interesting matchups. Lord knows we had 5 of them simultaneously on Tuesday night. They need to break these up and play one a night every week, right?
That'd be nice. And, yeah, this coming week, I mean, got a busy weekend. I'll be at 3 different venues over the weekend. I'll be down at the Naval Academy Friday night for the Veterans Classic there, Maryland and Navy. Then Sunday, I'm going to see Towson for the first time, and Monday night, UMBC at there for the first time. So a lot of good stuff coming up this next week. So.
Buckets and Birds. If you want some great local college basketball flavor, we retweet him. He visits with us each and every week. It's all brought to you by Compass Point Golf down in Pasadena. Robert, have a great week, man. Enjoy the hoops this weekend.
All right, thanks, Nestor. We'll talk to you next week.
You got it. He will be courtside all weekend locally here, so go follow him at Buckets and Birds. You can follow me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I am on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.